Good morning, church. Happy Sabbath. The scripture is found in Matthew 6, verse 10. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Good morning, church. Good morning. I've been working on this song for about 3 years. No, really, 3 years. But I didn't think that I was finished with it until last night. And the funny thing is that I didn't really need to make any edits to it. And there is no music behind it. So I would ask that you all just close your eyes for the next 2 minutes. What would you give for another life without all the evil and the strife? Would you keep the faith? Would you give your soul? Would you accept Jesus Christ to make you whole? Would you die for your King and give up all distractions, raise your voice and sing? Would you call upon his name, give up the worldly things, the riches and the fame? 'Cause Jesus is knocking on your door, and he's asking you to come on to him. Jesus is knocking on your door, and he's asking you to pour out your sins. He's asking for you, broken as you may be. Seek and confess, you will see that Jesus is knocking on your door. You can answer or ignore, but I pray you'll let him in. What would you choose, be it rich or poor? Follow the worldly ways no more. Would you pack your bags and take the narrow road? Let Christ himself lighten your load. Would you keep the faith and believe it too? Would you rise from the water and be made new? Would you tell your friends of his soon return? Or would you keep all the light and let them burn? 'Cause Jesus is knocking on your door, and he's asking you to come on to him. Jesus is knocking on your door, and he's asking you to pour out your sins. He's asking for you, broken as you may be. Seek and confess, you will see that Jesus is knocking on your door. You can answer or ignore, but I pray you let him in. But I pray you let him in.
silly, but as I sat there, I realized what a big sissy I am. So I do close my eyes, and the first thing that I have is almost like an angelic girl with almost like for some reason, a ballerina outfit on. Sorry, I'm not an owl. I can't look that far behind me. But, Kelsey, I appreciate it. I mean, always a blessing. Without music, first time, and you present it before God, and that's what matters. It was in your heart. And I know I was moved by it, and I appreciate that. Another thank you also to everybody that was involved in VBS. It's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. And we know, what do they say? A lot of hands make light work. Thank you very much for everyone who's involved in VBS. So what's today? What is today? Today's Sabbath, right? So I'm asking that you can be with me right now on Sabbath, okay? So today's a little different. We know we had something special, but I'm asking you, and I'm praying with you, be with me right now because it's Sabbath, and I need you from start to finish, okay? So how many of you have ever heard of the following things? Don't play near the stove. It's hot. You might burn yourself. Anybody hear that one? Don't run with scissors or you might trip and stab yourself, right? Stop making faces and crossing your eyes or you might get stuck, right? No Red Ryder BB guns or you might. That's why I have to wear these now. Don't get them wet or feed them after midnight or, you know what I'm talking about. You guys know that one too? I know when I was a little kid, you just don't feed them after midnight. They get crazy. Has anyone ever done any of these things? Has anyone ever ran with scissors? Right back there? Of course. Of course. That's why you're back there too. Let's go ahead and pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I was glad when they said to me, let us go into the house of the Lord. You've provided us this wonderful church body and sanctuary to come together to praise your name and worship you on this beautiful Sabbath. I pray that I will share the message that you intend for us in a way that pleases you and that will move us forward as one church. I pray that whatever comes, however you use me, I pray that this message will be yours. Change the words as you see fit. Sit me down if you must, but I pray it's your message. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So in life, there are instructions. There are life's lessons that guide us. Sometimes there are these instructions that we are given that we must read completely before taking any action. And you bear with me, I don't do this, but today I guess is the day. Can anybody read that? Anybody have that? Okay. Have we ever done one of these before, where you took a test? So the first thing you're supposed to do is read everything carefully before what? Now continue and read everything down. Okay? If you can scroll to the very bottom. Okay? So as we go down to the bottom, if you're the first person to reach this point, loudly call out, I'm the first person to go ahead and, read the directions, right? And then underline all even numbers on the left side of this paper, so we're doing pretty good. We've all underlined it. Loudly call out, I'm nearly finished. I followed directions. And now that you have finished reading everything, do sentences 1 and 2, which was what? Have we ever done this? Have we ever gone through one of these things and we've gone through it and we just start going and we start, oh, I'm circling here. I'm putting number 5 here. I'm filling in the 5 squares here. Now I got to circle 1 square here and I've got to do this and I'm here and I'm good. I am done. And when you get to the very bottom, it says, just do 1 and 2. And that's it. Stop right there. Because at the very beginning, it said, read all the instructions. Because when we don't listen to or read all the instructions, sometimes we end up getting the whole piece wrong. Today I'd like to look at the instructions we're given with the consequences or repercussions, why or why shouldn't we do something, and our actual response to the information provided. When we don't listen to directions or those warnings, sometimes the consequences of not listening catches up to us. And sometimes doing it our own way might not be the best way. So let me share with you this story. Maybe some of you know this, you probably heard it run around church a few times. So there's this couple a few years back, okay? So this couple's walking out into the garden, admiring all the plants, looking around at the trees growing there. And as they're looking, they seem to notice, hey, everything here was pleasant to the sight and good for food. So now the couple met someone in the garden, and they're discussing different types of fruit trees in the garden. And this individual that they met said, hey, you've got to try this fruit. The moment you try it, you're going to be like, wow. You haven't seen anything until you try this. You'll know a whole lot more. You'll kind of be like your dad. We heard that story before? I'm sure you all remember God's warning to Adam before. Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. We all know what happened after that. So you'd think you'd remember that warning, right? When your parents tell you something, you think you'd pay attention. So if my father tells me that I'm surely going to die, do you think a bell would ring? You think something would say, hey, I should probably pay attention because that kind of doesn't sound good for me. I kind of want to see tomorrow, right? So the day that Adam and Eve failed to follow God's direction in that garden, they got what? Kicked out of the house. Death may not have happened right then and there, but life certainly changed for them, didn't it? They lost almost everything for some fruit. We don't know why we're not supposed to eat the fruit, but God must have had a reason. God gives us directions. God gives us warnings and reasons why we should or shouldn't do something. If you do this, this will happen. When we don't follow directions, we may experience things that we don't want to happen. We may miss out on an opportunity or not get the results that maybe we're hoping for. You ever see this one? So we see the top picture, looks really nice. Some fancy photographer put the baby, made it look all cute, and somebody else said, you know what, I can do that, but maybe I won't quite do it the same way. And instead, they look like the baby's been knocked out, and right? So let's play a game. We like games? I've got a whole message that God's telling me I've got to give you, so I'm going to stand up here, and you can be a part of me. Do you want to play a game? I'm going to hug every one of you. Do you want to play a game? You're going to play a game, and you're going to like it. All right. Who knows the game Simon Says? I know the game Simon Says. You know the game Simon Says, right? All right, here we go. You ready? Simon says, raise your right hand. Simon says, raise your left hand. Simon says, shake them all around. Okay, now put them down. Simon didn't say. Some of you put them down. Some of you didn't put them down. Simon says, put them down. Some of you played a little too much. You're good. So when I think of my relationship and I think of a relationship with God, sometimes I think of Simon Says, right? if God says do this, what do you think I want to do? Do it. Do it. So if we listen to God and only do what he tells us to do in this game, what do you think? We win, right? Because when we're playing Simon Says, and if you don't listen to all the directions, eventually it's going to be last man standing. And a last man standing what? That last man standing wins. When we don't listen to God or do what we feel like doing, or we decide to do what we feel like doing on our own, or we want to listen to others, we're probably going to lose. So sometimes when we're told to do something, we've been told to do something before, right? What happens in the back of your mind when somebody tells you to do something? Somebody says, hey, I want you to go do this. And what's the first thing that comes to our mind? Why, right? And the military tries to tell us instant will and obedience, but I can tell you there's a couple thousand Lance Corporals and PFCs that are looking at me with a dumb look in their face saying, why? Why? WIFM. You ever hear of a WIFM? What's in it for me? Because that's what we do. Every time there's an instruction, every time we're told to do something, from the beginning of time until right now, there's been a WIFM. There's been a WIFM. And a WIFM is that big question mark in our head every time we're told to do something or asked to do something or we know we should do something. Why? What's in it for me? That's what we want. That's what we want to know. What good is it to me that I should do this? Do we have that? So here God telling me to do something, right? What's in it for me, right? If Simon says this or God says this, I do this. But I'm still kind of, why? If God says don't do this, then don't do it. Because the majority of the times when God has told his children to do something or not to do something, somewhere in there in what he says is a WIFM. We know when you read through the scriptures, he gives us a WIFM. Sometimes the WIFM might say, what? Lest he dies, right? That seems to be in a lot of those WIFMs. Hey, do this or don't do that, lest he dies. Do this, and you're going to have, ta-da, right? Behind door number 1. As we read through Leviticus in chapter 26, verse 1, all the way through 39, but I'm not going to read all of it. God lays out simple guidance for us and clearly provides, you shall not make idols for yourself. Neither a carved image nor a sacred pillar shall you rear up for yourselves, nor shall you set up an engraved stone in your land to bow down to it, for I am. So he just gave us what? He just gave us directions. He just gave us instructions to do what? What are we supposed to do? Not make idols, right? Now let me move down a little further, and I'm going to get to this. This is the WIFM. If you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and perform them, then I will give you rain in its season. The land shall yield its produce, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit. Your threshing shall last till the time of vintage, and the vintage shall last till the time of sowing. You shall eat your bread to the full and dwell in your land safely. I will give peace in the land. You shall lie down, and none will make you afraid. I will rid the land of evil beasts, and the sword will not go through your land. You will chase your enemies, and they fall by the sword before you. And it goes on a little bit further. That's a pretty good WIFM for me. If I don't do this, you're going to give me all of this. Is that enough WIFM for us? Amen. Right? If you need a what's in it for me, how's that for a what's in it for me? Don't do this, I will give you all of this. But there's something else to it. For every good WIFM, there's a what? There's a bad WIFM. So God continues describing the wonderful rewards that await those who obey his commandments. Up through verse 13, right? But when his WIFM turns to those that do not listen, and if you're there now, starting at verse 14, but if you do not obey me and do not observe all these commandments, and if you despise my statutes, or if your soul abhors my judgment, so that you do not perform all my commandments, but break my covenant, I also will do this to you. And here it comes. I will even appoint terror over you, wasting disease and fever, which shall consume the eyes and cause sorrow of heart. And you shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. I will set my face against you, and you shall be defeated by your enemies. Those who hate you shall reign over you, and you shall flee when no one pursues you. And after all this, if you did not obey me, then I will punish you 7 more times. That sucks. You need some with them? I'm not taking that one. I'm not taking that option. And if you follow through this part of the with them, God goes a lot longer and a lot further with the bad with thems than he gave us for the good with thems. Now, those good with thems were pretty darn good. But when God is upset with you because you don't want to follow his instruction or obey him, guess what? You better stand by. A few years back, there was a Marine Corps general out in a time at Iraq, and he was speaking to the Marines, and it was one of his speeches that he gave to the Marines before they took off. So when he wrote his letter, his statement to the Marines, he used an old statement that came from it was kind of a paraphrasing from a Roman dictator, Lucius Sulla. So he paraphrased it, and what General Mattis said to the Marines when he talked about the Marines and how the enemy should perceive the Marines out in Iraq, he said, look, we're going to be no better friend or we're going to be no worse enemy. You figure out which one you want. And he put that out to the Marines, and he let them know. And he let the Iraqis know. He let everybody out there know that this is how Marines operate out in Iraq. We'll either be your best friend or your worst nightmare. When it comes to God, General Mattis could almost have been talking about him, right? If we're obedient and listen to what God has directed us to do, there's no one that can touch us. But if we turn our backs on God and stop listening to God, the one who kind of brought us to the dance, so to say, right? We'll have our worst enemy in a hurry, and it's not going to end well for us. Do you believe me? I want you to follow along with me as we look at what God says to do. And I'm going to give you some examples, and I hope that you'll stay with me on this. And when we think about some of the things that we did our own. So if you open up to Numbers 20, and we'll look at verse 20. When there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron. And we continue to read how the people started complaining to Moses and saying how we should have just died. There's nothing here. We should have just stayed in Egypt. This sucks. We've got nothing. And just complaining and whining. So God, being the great and merciful God he is, he speaks to Moses and he said, why don't you go ahead and speak to that rock? Why don't you speak to that rock? And everything's going to be taken care of, right? Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, speak to the rock before them, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water from them out of the rock and give drink to the congregation and their animals. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded, and because Moses, we know what kind of person Moses was. Moses had a little hard time controlling his self-discipline, didn't he? So Moses, he gathers everybody together and he says to them, here now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock, right? Because they couldn't stop complaining. What else do you want? I've done everything that God's told me to do. So Moses, he lifts his hand and he takes the rod and he does what? He strikes it. How many times? Yeah, not just once. He strikes it twice. He strikes it twice, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and their animals drink, right? All he had to do was what? Not that hard, right? Moses, speak to the rock. It's kind of like having a dog. Speak. It's just real simple stuff. Moses, speak to the rock. That's all you got to do. And instead, he gets all fired up. He gets all perturbed because everybody's really irritating him. It's like going think of a long car trip with your kids. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Because Moses lost his cool, we know that God didn't allow those two to bring the assembly into the land which I have given him, right? And that's what God tells him. Because he lost his cool, fine Moses, fine Aaron, you just won't make it to the promised land. That sucks. because you couldn't take the time to follow directions and just do the simple things. God didn't give him something hard to do. Just speak. Let's take a look at Genesis 19. The angels of the Lord were in Sodom and Gomorrah, and we know the story. And while in town, those angels, because Lot said, hey, please stay with me, right? They were guests of Lot. The angels then urged Lot to take his family and friends out of the city in the morning because the Lord has sent us to destroy it, in verse 13. As the Lord was merciful to Lot and his family, the angels escorted them quickly out of the city and warned them, escape for your life. Do not look behind you, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be destroyed. So what shouldn't I be doing? Right? Lot's wife out of there, and they're beating feet, right? They're getting out of there because brim and firestone are falling from the sky. Let's go, people. The angels are escorting them because they're a little slow. And let's go, people. We've got some destruction to do. And while they're heading out, brim and firestone coming, and you can hear in the background, you know how it is like the cool movie. Everybody wants to be the one who walks away from the blast and just keeps strolling, right? Instead, Lot's wife, she's got to check it out because she hasn't been part of anything like that. See, I'm a combat engineer. I deal with explosives. I do it all the time. So I'm used to the explosion. But Lot's wife looks back, and what happens? Right? This picture is supposed to represent Lot's wife. So who's saying that's her pillar of salt? Nothing hard. Nothing hard. Listen up, people. We're about to evacuate the area. All I need to do is just keep moving, orderly possession. Do not look back. Not hard. How hard is it to not look back? I love of Judges, starting at chapter 13. As the angel of the Lord appeared to the wife of Manoah, the Danite, and told her that she would conceive and bear a son. Now, therefore, please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink, and not to eat anything unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head. For the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. Manoah would pray that day, again, saying, okay, God, I need you to help me one more time because I didn't catch all the directions. Can you just share it with me one more time? So, angels of the Lord come back again. They speak with them again and say, hey, look, here's what you got to do. We already told you. Don't drink. Don't do this. Don't put a razor to your son's head. Right? Easy enough, right? Don't drink. Don't get a haircut. I tried that last week. I didn't get a haircut. I didn't shave. Some time would pass, and we get to chapter 16 of Judges in verse 17, that Samson would share with Delilah the secret to his strength. If I am shaven, then my strength will what? Will leave, become weak, and be like any other man. So Delilah tricks him and has him shaved while he's sleeping. And when Samson awakes to her warning, he finds that the Lord had departed from him. Don't drink, don't shave, don't cut your hair. Easy stuff, but again, our failure to follow simple directions. No, maybe he didn't shave himself personally, but he played with fire. He played with fire by saying, hey, I know you've tried to trick me several times already, but why not? Here's what happens when you shave my hair or cut my face, right? And what happens? The worst thing of all, we're here now because we want what? We want a relationship with God, right? That one haircut, he lost that relationship with God because God departed him. Simple instructions. Don't do this, but because of that, he lost this. Because we want to eat fruit, we lost that. Think about it, people. Samson was chosen by God to deliver Israel from the Philistines, but instead he allowed Delilah to interfere with that relationship with God. Our relationship with God and willingness to obey God, it seems like it should be so easy, but for some reason, we always find a way to screw it up. God spoke to Noah and his sons with him in verse 9 of Genesis. And as for me, behold, I established my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, And with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the cattle, and every beast of the earth with you, of all that go out of the ark, every beast of the earth, thus I establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. That's pretty good news, right? That's really good news. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. And further in verse 13, I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And it shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The water shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. Never again. That is awesome, right? That is awesome. Here's your whiffum. What's in it for me? I give you this, right? I love rainbows. I love no floods. I love not having to pay insurance for my house because it was flooded. So life is a renewed relationship with God, and what better way to praise Him than let's build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. In Genesis chapter 11:4. What are we thinking? What are we thinking, people? You know, did God at any point say, you know what? Build a tower. I think you're going to need a tower. It's a good idea. Build this tower. And don't just build any tower. Let's not go for the Sears Tower. Let's build the biggest tower anybody's ever seen, higher than the clouds, up to the sky. I mean, practically touching the stars and the sun, right? That tower was huge, right? God gave us a whiffum. I'm making you a covenant. I'm building a covenant. Do this, people. Just do this. I'm giving you all this. I'm giving you something awesome. I mean, something, I put so much time and effort and so much thought and care into wanting to give you the very best, the best of my heart. When God says that to me and He says, it's between me and you, right? Don't we feel kind of special when somebody has it wasn't even a secret. I mean, He outright gave it to everybody. But you know how it is when somebody has something special and they say, this is my last piece of candy. It's from far away, you know. It's something very special, but I want you to have it. It's between me and you, okay? Between me and you. He's making that bond. He's making that connection. And we just kind of punted it. We kicked it to the curb and we said, let's build a Babel tower, right? Simple instructions. In the book of Jonah, God had to tell Jonah twice to arise and go to Nineveh, that great city, and preach it to the message. Preach to it the message that I tell you. So after Jonah thumbed his nose once at Nineveh, right, he said, I don't think so. Nineveh's not for me. I'm out of here. I got a place. I want to go to Tarshish. The Ninevites, what a bunch of bums. You know, what do I have? What do I have to do over there? I mean, I think he's got it all wrong. I'm going to Tarshish. I'm avoiding this place. This place is bad juju, bad news, right? So after he does that and he thumbs his nose and decides to do whatever he pleases, he ends up getting stuck in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. He finally admits his errors. He prays to God. The big fish spits him out. And then he finally listens to God and goes on that 3-day journey through the town, right? Crying out in the city as God told him, yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. I don't know about you, but it seems like it would have been a lot easier for Jonah to just listen the first time. Jonah, go to Nineveh, share this message. But he didn't do it. He did what he wanted to do. He couldn't follow simple instructions. Go to Nineveh. That's all you have to do. Go to Nineveh. Go to Nineveh. We've been there. You know you have. You know each one of us in this sanctuary right now has done whatever we've pleased. Somebody told us to do something, and you said, I don't want to. I really don't want to. Maybe because you dislike somebody, you dislike something, you dislike a place. There's something inside of you that you just like, I'm too good for that. You know what? I don't need to do this. You know, and in the Marine Corps, we have these things called working. And I've been through some pretty filthy working parties, which it's an experience for me. If some of you experienced it, I can only imagine some of the faces when you would have seen some of the stuff I had to put my hands through and touched and done. That's life, though. That's part of the requirement. My job required me to do this. God's requirement is you go to Nineveh. You don't eat the fruit. God says go to Nineveh, you go to Nineveh. You don't go to Tarshish because you think it's just not worthy of God's word. It's not our call. We know that even after the Ninevites, it only took one try. Day one, he didn't even need to do the whole 3-day journey. We know on day one, the Ninevites got it, right? And what does Jonah do? He still sits down and pouts. Why? But why? You know, sometimes that with them, it doesn't matter to us. It doesn't matter. All you have to know is God said do this, do this. Stop asking why sometimes. Sometimes the with them, it's not up to you. Just do what you were told to do, and everything's going to be okay. The big picture will come later. In Exodus 25, God told Moses how to build the Ark Covenant. And then in Numbers 4, God gave Moses the assignments for the families of the Levites. And when Aaron and his sons have finished covering the sanctuary and all the furnishings of the sanctuary, when the camp is set to go, then the sons of Kohath shall come to carry them. But they shall not touch any holy thing, lest they die. So some more with-ems. And we're reminded in Numbers 7:9, but to the sons of Kohath he gave none, because theirs was the service of the holy things which they carried on their shoulders, right? Because part of that was put these big, long poles through these holy things so they could carry them, right? So later on in Samuel 2:6, we read, and when they came to Nashon's threshing floor, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. Then the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, struck him there for his error, and he died there by the ark of God. Don't touch the holy things, lest you die. The oxen stumbled. You don't think God's got it? God had everything. God has control of everything. The oxen stumbled. The ark didn't stumble. The ark didn't shake. The ark didn't wobble. All it said was, that ox stumbled. And Uzzah, because he's thinking on his own of, I need to do this, and we forget that God's got it. Just back off. Let God take care of it. Instead, he puts up his hands, touches the ark, and he dies. Just like the Witham said, do this, you're going to die. It's simple instructions. Later on after that, David took this to heart, and we know in 1 Chronicles in 15:2, David said, no one may carry the ark of God but the Levites, for the Lord has chosen them to carry the ark of God and to minister before him forever. And sometimes the lesson comes too late, right? You were given the instructions, you didn't follow the instructions, kind of like don't touch the fire, don't touch the stove because it's hot. Sometimes we touch it, and sometimes we get burnt. Uzzah got burnt. And David learned the lesson. David was able to see it, and now he's able to share it again. Look, people, for the love of God, please don't touch it. I can't lose any more servants, you know. I need you here. And just listen. Don't touch it. We've gone thousands of years making life very difficult for ourselves when we could have made it very easy by just listening to him. God didn't have to perform some crazy light show or light up the sky with Harry Potter magic, right? The Disney magic stuff. Believe, right? God gave simple directions, and all that he asked was for us to be obedient and follow through. Matthew 6:10. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we know that's part of the Lord's Prayer that was shared with us, the example. God gave us the example of how to pray, and in that, he gave us the instructions to let us know that when we're praying, leave it to God. It's his will, not our will. Don't do it your own way. Don't try to be clever about it. Don't try to, hey, good initiative, right? Bad judgment. You heard of that one? Because that's what it becomes. Let it be his will that's done. Sometimes we need to take time to pray and ask, what is your will? God began with let us make man in our image. And then God gave us simple instructions to start off. He started off with these simple instructions of don't eat the fruit of that tree. But we ate the fruit anyway. Up until that moment when we ate that fruit of the tree, life was going to be perfect. Life was perfect. But instead of his will, life went because we can't follow instructions. We didn't do his will. For a piece of fruit that some stranger said it's okay to eat because we think we're going to get smarter, even though God says specifically to not eat from that particular tree, right? Sometimes those people that are on the outside telling us what to do kind of think of like that game too, right? We talked about Simon Says, right? When God tells us to do something, we're going to be okay. But when that guy Simon over there tells us to do something, it's probably not a good thing. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in the what's in it for me that we forget it was never about me. It was never about you. It was never about us. It's about him in that phone call. That's him now. And that's I think you already knew what I was getting at too, because we all have phones. I think everybody has phones. It's just everywhere. So sometimes when I'm at work, because I'm trying to be the good husband, or when I'm traveling our way, I text my wife. And I text her just to let her know I love her. And because I have Jiffy Lube thumbs, I hit all the wrong buttons. 3 quarts of oil, But I'm going to text I love her. But instead of saying I love her, it says I live her. Yeah. But one day, after being very frustrated and saying, I'm tired of not being able to hit the right keys because I want to say I love her, not I live her, and then for some reason, God spoke to me, and he said, think of your relationship with me. If you love me, then you live me. So when we love God, we live God. How does God want us to live? The instructions that he wants us to follow, we follow, and we do. We're living God here. We're living his instructions. And a lot of frustration led me to that, and it was one of those, man, it's like you smack yourself in the back of the head, and you look up at God, and you just kind of shake your head, and you laugh at yourself, and you say, I'm so foolish. I'm such a fool. It's right there before my eyes. It's like life with God is like that text, that email, and that phone. When you type up one thing, it changes it because it auto-corrects it, and that's what God does for us. He auto-corrects it. We make a decision to do this, and God goes, and he punts us back in the other direction, and he fixes us. He corrects us, and he changes it to what he wants it to say. After Moses spoke with God, and God told him that you're going to go back to Egypt and free my people, Moses threw up his arms in despair with the excuse that, I don't have the ability to speak. I'm no good at it, right? He's only been one of the leaders of Egypt, right? The guy was able to do things. He was a leader. He was a leader. He was leading all of Egypt to do all these great things, but yet I can't get this word across that you want me to get across. Make excuses all you want, Moses. So instead, God nips it in the bud. He goes, enough. I'm tired of this. Aaron, your brother's going to go do it. Any questions? No? Good. Go get it done. God gave Moses all the tools. All that Moses had to do was follow through with these instructions. Hey, you do this, I'm going to send you all the plagues. All right, God, here, what have we got now? Moses, I want you to come up to this water, and you can take the I gave you, and hey, just raise your arms like this. Like this? Exactly. Whoosh, and the water opens up. That's all you got to do. Follow the instructions, and these are the things that happen. When Moses finally listens, these things happen. God's will is going to get done whether we do it willingly or not. God proved that to us when that wayward prophet of God, Balaam, was angered by his donkey for deciding to beat his donkey, right? We know that they're traveling through. Balaam's on his way because he's going to get paid some good bucks, right? He's kind of like a contract prophet now. He's not God's prophet, even though he was before. Now he's kind of like a contractor out there. I'm going to make some easy money. All I have to do is go over there and curse Israel. I'm going to talk some bad things about Israel, right? And as he's traveling on his donkey, and he's going through the path, and the donkey sees what? He sees the angel of God in front of him with the sword, right? But Balaam doesn't see it. The donkey turns this way, and Balaam, because he doesn't know any better, and he's not following God anyway, he decides, thump! What are you doing, donkey? Do what I told you to do. They keep going along. Thump! He hits him again. He hits him twice before finally what happens? He hits him that third time, and the donkey turns around and does what? Yes, he does. God's anger was aroused. An angel of the Lord took a stand in the way, and we know that. And we know after Balaam struck him 3 times, the donkey turns around, and he said, was I ever disposed to do that? Right? Look, Balaam. Look at me. I got these big teeth. I got this funny tail back here. I'm a donkey. I can't talk. Who do you think's talking? It's not me. It's not until that donkey finally speaks to Balaam, that Balaam's eyes are finally like, bow, right? Saucers wide, and now he finally sees that the angel of God is right there before him with the sword. If it weren't for that donkey turning aside, the angel of the Lord tells him, look, I would have struck you and that donkey down if it weren't for that mule of yours. He's a prophet of God. His instruction was to do God's will. Instead, because I'm going to get some easy money, I'm going to do what I want for a few extra bucks. And this is what happens. He nearly lost his life. Sometimes, even myself, I feel like a donkey because I don't do the things that I'm supposed to do. Sometimes it takes somebody else to talk to us and tell us, man, you are way off kilter. You are way out of line. God can use anybody. Even if you're not ready for him to use you, it doesn't matter. God's going to get it done one way or another. Leading up today, I prayed and asked God, hey, what is it that you want me to speak about? I've had plenty of time. I've thought about it. I've had this down. And I don't get to speak a lot. And sometimes when I do, I find out when it's all done and I think I've shared the message that God wanted me to share, later on after the service, people come up and say, I really appreciated that. I learned so much about this. And in my head, I'm thinking, I thought God told me to talk about this, right? And then the person, 2 people after that will come up, hey, I really appreciate the service. I learned so much about this. And it's not what they said, and it's not what I thought I said. We get a different message. And who am I? Who am I to question it? The whiffum is, come up here. God asked me to go ahead and stand before you. Then I'm asking God, help me to share a message. If the message is, hey, God loves you, I'm glad you got that message. If the message is for you to help somebody else, then help somebody else. Amen to you. The message is going to be different for each one of us, but stop asking why. Do what God tells you to do. The results are going to be his. And let's be happy about what God has for us. In Isaiah 55, 8 through 9, we're told, "For my thoughts are not yours, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." We may not always understand what's going on, or the certain things that he wants, and things don't always make sense, and it won't always make sense. We just need to listen and do it. And I'd like to continue with these few examples here. In Kings 2. You will go back one, please. In Kings 2 and chapter 5, Captain Naaman, the great and honorable commander of the army of the king of Syria, we know about him, right? He's got leprosy. The guy was a great guy, a great and honorable man. This is in the Bible of how he's described, right? This isn't just you and me. This is in the Bible, so it's got to be true. There must have been something very special about Captain Naaman. Even though he's Syrian, he's not an Israelite. We don't know him to be a Christian, but he was a great and honorable man just the same. Now, his wife had a servant girl from Israel, right? So this girl, she knows about the leprosy. She goes up to her mistress, being Captain Naaman's wife, and says, I know a guy who can help you. He's a prophet, and I just wish he could get there. So, of course, she goes ahead and shares the word to her husband. You know how that's going to be. You know how it is at night. You're with your wife, getting ready to go to bed, and you're talking about how the day went. So how's your day? Good. Oh, by the way, I spoke with the mistress girl, and guess what? I think we can do something for you. Really? How do I get this done? Well, all you have to do is go here. So Captain Naaman does. He gets permission from his boss, and he heads off, and he goes to find the prophet Elisha. And when he gets there, prophet Elisha, he sends a messenger instead to go share the word. And he said, fine, he wants to be healed. He wants to be cured of his leprosy. Here's what he's got to do. Though with him, you want to be healed, you've got to go ahead and wash yourself how many times in the Jordan? 7 times in the Jordan. That's all you got to do. Just wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan. And instead, Captain Naaman, this great and honorable man who has sins like the rest of us, again, throws up his arms like everybody else does and throws a fit, and he gets all disgusted, and he's like, are you kidding me? I'm Captain Naaman. I am a great and honorable man. I'm not getting in that river. I got better rivers back in Syria. And it takes his guys, it takes his servants to go ahead and kind of, take them down a notch, right? They got to take them down a notch. My father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and clean? We know at that point, he does. He gets into the water, he gets out, and what's really amazing is you think about this. Here's this grown man, this warrior. He's probably, usually they're calloused from war. They've been through a lot. Their skin is tough. Their skin is hard. Their body, their skin is all from the sun, and it's leather. But instead, when he came out of that water after, his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Because he listened. It took him a bit, but he listened. When we think about the crippled man by the pool in John 5, for 38 years we know the man was sick. He's unable to get in a healing pool of Bethesda. We know the angels would fly around, and one of them would come by every day. Yep, water time. He'd flip the water, right? Give it a little water, a little stir, and we know that the first one that got in the water was what? First one to get in the water was healed. But now, here's this guy, 38 years, crippled, doesn't move too fast. Angel of the Lord comes by, sees him over there, and what's he ask him? Do you want to be made well? He says, yeah. He goes, well, rise, take up your bed, and walk. Jesus provided instruction. He gave the man the what's in it for me. He said, you'll be healed if you just get up. All he wanted to do was complain and make excuses, didn't he? He made excuses because he said, I'm not fast enough. Every time I get up, somebody gets in the water before me. That's not what the angel of the Lord was asking him. The angel of the Lord asked him specifically, do you want to be healed? Not do you have help. Do you want to be healed? Yes or no? Say it. Yes or no? Yes, I want to be healed. Then you're healed. Rise up. That's it. God gives us instructions to do something, do it. Follow it. Stop making up excuses. Stop doing your own thing. Just do it. It's God. What can't he do? One of my favorite records growing up, and you know, I know I'm not the oldest, so I can share this story. So, Bill Cosby. Anybody ever listen to Bill Cosby? Bill Cosby, he lives up in Massachusetts, so we're friends. We're buddies. We knock knuckles a lot. We hang out. Cosby, I love Bill Cosby. I love listening to his records, and me and my older brother used to wear out the record. We'd sit, we'd lay down in the living room just playing that record over and over again, all his little stories. And one of our favorites was Noah's Ark. Anybody know that one? Noah, I'm going to make it rain for 40 days and 40 nights. And you remember how Bill Cosby told that story. Rain? What's rain? And he continues on, I'm going to make it rain and I'm going to flood the earth and I want you to build an ark. And Noah says, what? What's an ark? Right? You remember? I mean, if you ever heard the story as Bill Cosby, that's how he shared it. And it's a lot more entertaining when he does it, but I love it. And God told Noah to do maybe not as simple as what he told everybody else to do, but he told him, build an ark. I want you to take this type of animal, 2 and 2 of this. I want you to take this many of these clean animals. I want you to do this and build the ark because the Whiffam's coming. I'm about to destroy the place you know right now is home. That's a pretty good Whiffam for me, right? Yeah. All right, boys, let's get them going. Build the ark because I don't want to be destroyed, right? If God tells me that's going to happen, I'm going to do it. Nobody had ever seen rain or heard of rain, and God was about to bring it down upon a sinful world for the first time. He provided the directions on how to build it, and he was about to put him on that ark, bouncing on the water for a lot longer than 40 days, right? Because we know he's stuck out on the water for a long time. We didn't follow God's direction. Noah followed directions here, but because we didn't follow directions, that's why he had to destroy the earth. That's why he had to destroy what was there. We got to that point because we couldn't do the simple things. Noah had to do something difficult, which was build the ark. All we had to do was the simple things and follow. We didn't. Noah was stuck in that tough position of, it's you and your family. Get on board because, unfortunately, you're the only one that I have, found good grace in my sight, right? We didn't follow God's instructions and we sinned, and God's will was that he would flood the earth, and he had to do a bit of, call it spring cleaning, a bit of sanitizing. When we go on a cruise, and a couple of years ago, my wife and I, we went on a cruise with the Disney Dream Cruise, and in the end, we got a little toy ship and we got some t-shirts. When Noah went on a cruise, he got this nice rainbow. The rainbow's for us when we follow instructions. In John 9, there's the blind man, and Jesus says, let me spit on the ground and make some mud and put it in your eyes, and you'll see. Would you want to be in that position? What would you say if somebody right? It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem, it seems so far-fetched. But again, sometimes the bizarre, God makes the bizarre seem right. In Numbers 21:9, when Moses made a bronze serpent and put it on a pole, and so it was, if a serpent had bitten anyone, when he looked at the bronze serpent, he lived. You got your Whiffam. Look at it, you'll live. None of this would have been necessary, though, if they hadn't sinned up to that point, right? If they would have just stopped complaining, if they would have just been grateful for what God had given them. God wouldn't have been put in a position where now the Israelites are getting bit by snakes, and now he's got to tell Moses, you know what, build this bronze snake, put it on a pole, hold it up high, and if anybody gets bitten, I want you to look up. I want you to look up, and now you'll be okay, you won't die. And again, it all because of sin, because we don't follow directions. Here's another one of my favorites. I remember when I was younger and I saw this man. He was a big man on TV, and I remember seeing him on TV, and I remember how much I liked the song because I liked the tone of his voice. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. I love that song. I love that song. And every time I think of this story, I think of that song. But obviously, he sang it a lot better than I can too. So Joshua, right? The angels of the Lord, when it comes time, they tell him, hey, you shall march around a city, all you men of war, you shall go around a city once. And this you do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. But the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times. And the priests shall blow the trumpets. It shall come to pass when they make a long blast of the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, that all the people shall shout with a great shout. Then the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up, every man straight before him. So what do I have to do? Once a day, I'm going to go ahead and march around, right? Again, I'm a warrior. I'm Joshua. I'm the greatest warrior out here. I've done everything. I've been there. I've seen it. I've done it. I know how to fight. Hand to hand, I'm good with my weapons. I've destroyed a whole lot of populations, civilizations, but you're telling me all you want me to do is march around, it blows some trumpets, we're going to get slaughtered, right? Joshua, though, being the good follower of God, at no point do we hear him question it. Joshua gets everybody in file, he gets everybody in formation, gives them a right face, he gives them a forward march. Once a day, they march around. 2nd day, 3rd day, 4th day, 5th day, 6th day. And we know on that 7th day, he said, do it 7 times. And now you're going to blow those trumpets and you're going to shout. And what happened? The wall came tumbling down because he followed instructions and he did what he did. Something so bizarre, something so unobvious worked. But it works when it's with God. God works. In everything we do or want to do, we've always got to bring before God. As Christians and followers of God, we'd like to believe and hope that we're clearly hearing God when he's speaking to us. But in reality, how many of us really feel like we hear God? I mean, I do. I mean, the whole time I'm trying to think of what the message is supposed to be. God, is this what you want to do? I don't know if I'm really hearing it. We hear people say, God told me to take my kids and run them into the water while they're locked in the car. Come on, right? It's difficult, and you want to believe you have that relationship with God. You want to believe that you're listening to God. The only thing we can do at that point is pray. You got to pray. There are many examples of not following simple directions and feeling the consequences. There are many examples of those who did listen, and the rewards were given. Like Jonah, they may not have listened the first time, but when they did, God showed that following his directions and doing his will was the best choice, even though he still didn't get it. His son provided us the ultimate example of following his father's directions each and every day of that short life. Before he left us, he gave us the Lord's Prayer found in Matthew 6. And most importantly in that prayer, as we had with scripture reading, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's a reminder that no matter what we want to do, the results will be his will that will be done, and not our own. Follow his directions, hear his warnings, don't take matters into our own hands and attempt to do it our way. Don't do it. Before we do anything, lay it all down at his feet and ask that his will be done. So to do that, let's start off with the basics. First of all, you ever have a good boss? You ever have a good boss? You ever have a bad boss? So when you have a bad boss, for whatever reason he or she is a bad boss, when they tell you to do something, how do you carry out that? Probably procrastinate on getting it done. It's one of those, I hate this guy. I'll do it whenever I feel like it. But when you really appreciate a boss when they tell you to do something, what do? You want to please them. You want to get it done. You want to get things done. You got to love them. So if we're going to love God, if we love God, then all we have to do is be obedient to him and follow his instructions to do his will. Deuteronomy 6:5-7 reads, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes.